this idea of intercavitary pressures. The negative pressure in our thorax, that's normal, provides this suction phenomenon for all of the organs of the abdomen to be lifted up. This is what unweights the weight of the liver, because the pressure in the abdomen is higher than the pressure in the thorax. And so those organs are attracted superiorly towards the thorax. But also at the same time, you have gravity pushing down on them. And so what happens is the upper abdominal organs, or the upper abdominal cavity, has less pressure than the lower abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity, because the farther we get away from that negative pressure in the thorax, the more we feel the effects of gravity. A little bit of that is offset in the pelvis because of the position of the pelvis and the architecture of the pelvic organs. And it sort of also supports this idea of what normal posture is. And I put normal in air quotes because this is like one of those things gets argued in the rehab industry quite a bit, which is like where our pelvic position is and where our rib cage position is. If you look at the body, normal pelvic position is about 13 degrees of anterior tilt. This matches our normal rib position in our thorax, which is the anterior part of the rib is more inferior than the posterior part of the rib. The reason this happens is because of the thoracic curve. The thoracic spine is curved, so the rib sit like gravity sort of has. It's almost like you put a ring on top of the thoracic curve. And so the posterior side of the rib hits the curve, and then the anterior side continues to fall forward. So we have this natural anterior inclination in the ribs that are parallel then to the pelvis. And this is where the confusion in the rehab industry gets, because oftentimes we talk about this parallel relationship to the pelvis and the ribs, and people for some reason thought that is flat. Horizontal. It is not. The parallel relationship between the ribs and the pelvis is anterior tilt. And this anterior tilt is actually essential for maintaining good pressures in the pelvis and offsetting the pressure of gravity and the visceral column on top of it. The other cool thing is not only does that anterior tilt offset the pressure, but the shape of pelvic organs do too. So the shape of the bladder, the shape of the uterus are domes. And we know domes in architecture, much like the sacrum, are kind of like keystones. You know, if we're building a dome with cinder blocks, the apex of the dome is a keystone. But a sphere is really like stable too, because everything that loads on top of it is dispersed along the curve. Isn't that cool? Right? By design, our bladder and our uterus and their dome shapes are intentionally domed to offset the pressure from gravity and the visceral column of the anterior peritoneal organs. The visceral column also is supported, and like I read this yesterday and I was like, dang it, but also, yes, makes sense. The visceral column is supported by the abdominal wall and the abdominal activity, a strong abdomen. And then it's like, oh yeah, if you look at the anatomy, no wonder we have a 3-layer reinforced system of our abdominal muscles, because it is supporting us upright, but it's also supporting all these very heavy, high pressure organs and keeping them stacked up in a column. And this visceral column stacked up helps to provide our stability and shape, but it also helps to maintain good, healthy pressures within all the cavities, and then sit on top of those domed pelvic organs in a way that they're not pressing on them. Now, I don't want you to hear this and think, oh, yeah, that's why we give so many people exercises to strengthen their abdominal muscles. Yes and no, right? Because what you see here, and this is like, I'm bringing it back. I'm hoping to bring it back to the visceral piece and bring it back to like the change we saw in my client, which I treated her liver and then her core control improved. I treated her liver and her breathing mechanics improved, because muscles do muscle things. And one of the primary jobs of the muscles is to protect the organs. And so when the organs are not moving well within the container, the muscles around them stiffen up to protect them. And when the muscles neurologically stiffen up, it creates a hypotonus. And the hypotonus or hypertonus, right? The hypertonus often creates a co-contraction. And so what that can look like is a muscle that has lost its ability to either contract or eccentrically contract, right? It's basically a muscle that becomes a splint. And when a muscle is becoming a splint, it loses the dynamicness of stability. And so that's exactly what we see is people have a hard time engaging their abdominal muscles, engaging their transverse abdominis when they have visceral irritation, because the transverse abdominis is neurologically getting a message of like, don't change. And so by treating the organ, treating the liver, treating the duodenum, treating the small intestines, whatever it may be, right? Wherever the body leads you, by treating the organ, what happens is the organ moves better, and then the body goes, oh, organ's functioning better, moving better. I can take away the message to the muscles to be a splint. And then now we see in an instant often a improvement of abdominal control. And then what does that mean? We have an improvement of abdominal control, diaphragm function, and we have a resolution of improved visceral column stacking and pressure gradient, pressure distribution across the cavities. And this is what we're looking for, right? This is a really wonderful example of why you can create change so quickly like that. Hopefully this makes sense.